Hello, everyone. John Pike coming to you. This is our monthly mastermind call. Glad you could be with us. I've got a special guest with us today, Frank Prindle, who is somebody that we have been working together with, and also Frank Klesitz is going to be moderating today. We've got a great subject here at hand.
Cool. So the topic today is how to build an incredible buyer side of the business. But just before we were in the green room, John, you had a really great story about hiring the right person, using the assessments, understanding the behavior of someone first. Tell us about that success story. This is a really interesting way of solving a much bigger problem, just hiring one person. Tell us about that.
Well, it's interesting. It's not a success story yet, but the point of pain was so appropriate that I wanted to just briefly mention it. There's a broker in Texas who, over the last 10 years, confessed that she's had significant people issues as it relates to her business, specifically as it relates to hiring. In fact, she was so unsuccessful that she didn't want to actually hire anybody, because even though she knew it was the foundation of how she's going to build a successful company, she's kind of been operating almost all by herself. So some of the things that she said was she became incredibly judgmental and jaded of what she was hearing and seeing in an interview, and very, very skeptical. She had such a high level of fear that it wasn't going to work out. So she would just kind of be delaying and delaying as opposed to making a firm decision and moving forward. So the net result was this, which I think was really the most important thing, is that because of the revolving door that she had in her company over the last decade, she now has a reputation in the industry as being someone who can't keep people. So her reputation has been tarnished. She personally is of the utmost integrity, but her personal reputation as it relates to hiring people and keeping them on board has been felt not only by her but by people in her surrounding market. So I'm just thrilled that I had this conversation with her this morning. She agreed to go forward with us, and we hope to have her maybe featured in the next 4 months on one of these calls in terms of how we've been able to help her turn around that situation. So
Cool.
anyway, just a call that took place this morning that was pretty encouraging.
And then Frank Prindle, you were one of John's almost original clients, and you've been struggling for, you said, 20 years?
20
About
years.
20 years. Will you tell us a little bit about, before we go into the how and the why and everything, tell us what John Pike has done for you by hiring those right people.
Sure. Well, bottom line, I always had a belief that if you have the right team, hire the right people, you can do anything. And so at points in my real estate career, I thought, well, maybe my standards were too high. Maybe I was trying to get more out of it than I really could. But I was always frustrated on my buyer side, hiring and keeping good agents who would work with the buyers. We would find out that they would interview well and speak well and talk well, but in a very short time they weren't team players, or they wanted more money, and on and on and on, versus, hey, let's get this job done. I was really struggling, and I sent out a survey to about 1,500 agents in my different real estate networks, and I got good response. But basically, what I was trying to figure out was, if you've got buyer agents on your team, how many of you had at least 2 people for more than 5 years? And don't count your brother or your sister or your mother or your husband or wife, but what's the longevity of buyer agents for a team? Out of those 1,500 surveys, 4 people raised their hand that they had 2 buyer agents for more than 5 years, which was a revelation to me, which said, hey, I need some help to figure this out. At the same time, in my radio and television network of agents, Matt Wagner said, hey, you need to talk with John Pike. This was 6, 7, 8 months ago. I connected with John, and we've come together with a great plan it's been all positive, and I think, again, it solved the problem that I was seeking for 20 years.
Frank, appreciate that. Can you briefly tell everyone that's listening today, how do you spend the majority of your time? What are you primarily doing? Because what I really want to emphasize here is how much time you don't have to manage, to coach, to lead, to hold people accountable, etc. Because you're too busy to be involved with that. If you wouldn't mind just kind of explaining that just briefly.
Sure. As a team leader, John, I've got 12 people working for me right now. And obviously we're working both buyers and listings, and the majority of my time is spent on, one, the listing side. I do the listings myself, which a lot of team leaders still do out there, but also monitoring every piece of the pie that has to do with lead generation, with spending monies, with making smarter decisions. On the buyer side, I'm monitoring the process to ensure we've got the right people, the right number of leads, the right lenders, and it's a full-time job, and that's why we need a team to help do it. But I'm probably, I thought a long time ago that, hey, I build a team, life will get easier. Well, I'm your typical workaholic where I just fill up my time with more tasks. So my days are full, 7 days a week doing something, and there's not one day that I don't do something that has to do with real estate.
Right.
But what you've given us, John, is a good basic set of standards for my buyer side, again, that I was looking for a long, long time.
Okay. So then to say this another way, because of how much of the business and the things that you're operating and working with, you don't have time to do the nitty-gritty, working with the people in the field, you know, going on calls with them, coaching them, and that kind of stuff, because you're completely covered up. Is that right?
That's correct. I believe in systems and technology to help with that process. Again, if I can find the right agent who has all the ethics, who has the motivation, who sees the vision of working with us, and for a good day's work will get a good day's pay, we can let them go as long as we have the systems. And so that's what I've always strived to do, to allow me to monitor everything.
Right.
Yeah, so hopefully that answers the question.
Okay. So one of the questions that we were going to answer today is, why is sales turnover so high, and how can you prevent it, or how can you narrow the gap? Because it seems to be the biggest challenge in terms of having people with what I call the it factor, or what I've actually written about in entitling the sales DNA. So let me just give you one quick analogy. We've heard about the iceberg analogy, where 90% of the iceberg is hidden to the eye. And really, when you think about an interview, it's pretty much the same thing. 90% of what you need to know as a business owner is hidden. In other words, you can't merely rely on what they tell you or how they respond, even if you ask them great questions. You may have five candidates.
Also, too, man, we're not skilled interviewers.
Right.
Like, business owners are not skilled professional interviewers of talent.
Right.
Which I'm running into, so I just want to throw that out there.
That's another good
Right.
point. So even if you have the best questions, and there's programs out there that deal nothing but giving you the best questions, well, it's good to have better questions, but you're still the same dilemma where 90% of what you need to see is below the surface. Things like persistence. How much do they take accountability for their actions? How well do they handle rejection, right? How well do they problem solve? So we're talking about a multitude of things that are simply impossible to see with the naked eye that we are able to scientifically measure. Now, and then we can do it in a way such that we typically deliver a quadruple of hiring effectiveness in terms of accuracy. So that's why sales turnover is so high, because it takes a very unique blend of not only personality style. If you're only using DISC, you're going to get burned about 80% of the time because you're missing a huge piece of the puzzle. What are they motivated by is also of huge importance. And then third and most important of all, what are their natural talents? What do they do innately well? So that kind of brings us, so how to prevent that from taking place is by using some scientifically time-tested, proven tools that have an undisputed track record of elevating the hiring accuracy significantly. All right, so let's take a look at question number 2. Why should you, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, be very careful or cautious with investing in your people? Okay? Here's the simple answer. Because not everybody is treated, not everybody's created equal. So after having trained over 200,000 salespeople in my career and having assessed and mentored a lot of people, I can tell you this. I can put a group of salespeople in a room, and I can expose them to the exact same message, world-class training, all at the same time. I can send them out, and the top 10% or 20% of that sales force, because of the fact that they're already good salespeople, are going to be able to accelerate and have a higher return on that training than the people that are average, your utility players, or the people that are mediocre. Okay? So, in my view, not everybody is created equal and deserves the same type of attention or the same type of treatment. Earlier this week, I had a call with a broker who was saying that some of her people are upset because she's showing favoritism and giving more leads to her top performer. It just so happens that her top performer has been there less than a year, no sales experience or real estate experience, but yet he's absolutely crushing it. And the 2 people that have been there the longest aren't really pulling their weight at all. So they're begrudging the fact and complaining that they're not getting the leads. As an owner, you want to give the leads that you're spending this valuable money on to people who have the highest probability of getting the return. Okay? So business owners become more and more jaded and reluctant to invest in training because they're not confident that they're going to get a return that they expect, and rightly so. And the reason that you're not going to get the return is most people do not have what I call the sales DNA, and therefore when you train them, it's going to have a very, very small or negligible impact. All right. Anything to add, either of you, Frank, on any of the things that we've discussed so far?
Maybe it's not relevant right now. I was just saying, what is the difference of the profile for maybe a buyer's agent versus maybe a listing person of what you're looking for in all these things?
Sure. Well, the main difference between a buyer's agent and a listing agent is the sense of urgency. So one is more of a hunter, if you want to look at it that way, versus a farmer. Okay, so look at it from a temperament and a personality style point of view. You and I, Frank, K, are 99 on the D score. Okay, 99. Doesn't get any more higher sense of urgency than that. Frank, you show that you're a lot lower on the D score, okay? So we basically, in our nature, are more transactional, okay? From the standpoint, it's the thrill of the hunt. We're very impatient. We want to get results. We want to see it yesterday. A buyer's agent, to contrast, is somebody who's typically more consultative. They value relationships. They'll take more time. Right? It's a better fit for their temperament and for their personality. We did actually an interview. The last interview we did was we took a look at the profile of the listing agent for Mark Spain, who's brand new, not 1 day of sales experience or real estate experience, and he had 15 listings in his first 30 days. Why? Not only does he have the sales DNA, but he has an extremely high D score. The guy is just on fire. He's got a lot of fuel. All right? He's passionate. Okay. Frank, does that answer your question?
No, it made the sense of urgency, which can be assessed through the assessment. Love it.
Now, it's not to say that somebody with a lower D score like Frank Prindle on the line here can't be successful as well. It's just that from an optimal point of view in terms of volume and activity and so forth, it does help when you have the higher the D, the better. If you're on the buyer's agent side, we actually don't want your D score to be too high because you're going to be too impatient. People are going to be deliberating and making, dragging their feet on making a decision. It's going to drive you crazy, okay? So there's a little bit of a tip as it relates to the main difference between a buyer's agent and a listing agent. All right, cool. Let's take a look at the third question, which is how to onboard a new hire in the most powerful and effective way. So I want you to think about the typical approach for a new hire. What happens the first week, the first month, the first quarter that they're on board? If you're like most people, The vast majority basically say your prayers and take your vitamins and hope that they pass the 90-day probationary period. In other words, who they said they were in the interview is who shows up every day, and even more importantly, that they're performing and showing early signs that they're going to be a strong contributor to the company. Okay, so that's the traditional approach. Let me tell you the approach that we take. With every new hire that we brought on board with Frank, the very first week that they are hired, we review their assessment results with them, and the conversation looks like this. If it was Frank Prindle that we were talking about, I say, Frank, it's not a matter of if you are going to be successful, but how successful you're going to be, because we know from these assessments that your personality style, your motivators, and your talents are uniquely in a unique fashion such that you are going to be an absolute rock star in this position. Okay? So then we proceed to review and to give them a heightened sense of awareness around their personality style, what it is that motivates and drives them, or how to create the ideal work environment, and also how to leverage the best strengths that they have. It is an enormous encouragement. I've done this thousands of times, but not one time have I ever had somebody that I've actually gone this process through that's ever experienced anything similar. Again, it's almost always the traditional way, okay? So it's a powerful way to start. It also helps not only the new hire, but also the leader of the organization to both understand each other in such an accelerated fashion in terms of how they like to communicate with each other, what it is that motivates and drives them, therefore how to work in the best environment with them, etc. Okay, so then what we've been doing now also is that Frank has retained me to do an onboarding program with all of his new hires. And so what basically these folks do is they fill out at the end of every week, they fill out a quick online survey. It takes only 5 or 10 minutes. It's got to be quick and simple. But basically, it's very targeted. The questions are very focused. For example, the very first question is, to what degree did I achieve my activity goals and performance metrics this week? I want to give you an example of what that looks like. To what degree did I achieve my activity goals and metrics this week? A 0 equals I met my goal. A 1 equals I have exceeded my goal according to the established metrics and accountabilities that they have. So what this does for me as a coach is it helps me to determine, for example, right here, he was actually on vacation that week. So there's not a very good likelihood that he's going to achieve his performance metrics, okay? Over here, because I have this insight and this information, we're able to target our coaching call, and we're able to talk about, okay, not only that his results were below for that week, but why were they below? And we're able to kind of provide some suggestions and recommendations. So that's one of the questions. Another one has to do with how to sell faster, easier, and with less resistance. So this one here has to do with how often was I successful personalizing my communication to the style of the buyers. How often was I successful in communicating this to the style of the buyers? Okay, so folks, after having attended over 100 different sales training programs and again helped assess and train over 200,000 people, the single most powerful, I guess, principle that I could tell anybody as it relates to sales is that when you're able to identify and recognize what's important to somebody, how and why they make a decision, and also how they want to consume information, you build trust and rapport quickly, easily, and build an emotional bond so that you come across as being believable, trustworthy, and someone that they want to do business with. You do that by being able to identify their buying style, which happens to be their personality style. So what I teach each and every person one-on-one is how to identify and recognize the different buyer style. Are they the D, the I, the S, or the C? And if so, to personalize their communication to that specific style. And that's something that we look at weekly. And actually, the salesperson We'll actually review some of the sales calls that they've had that week, why they think they went well, why they think some of them didn't go well, what they could have done differently, how the buyer responded to the interaction, why they think they responded that way, etc. So we are continuing to sharpen the saw and provide them with weekly coaching for 30 minutes as a result of having some of this information from this online profile. Here's another question that we ask. What sales and buyer style insights did I gain from calls this week from my post-call analysis? Here he says this week, I have to switch speeds and strategy to adapt to clients' changing timelines to not appear pushy or car salesman-like. It's a bit frustrating, but I must remain patient and accept that priorities are always changing in people's lives. Wow. That's is that a massive learning point for a salesperson? That's huge, folks. Now listen, let me tell you a principle about sales. There's hundreds of them. People buy on their timing, not on ours. Let me repeat that again. People buy on their timing and not ours. We need to be professional, respectful, appropriately having a sense of urgency, but not be car salesman-like, certainly not come across as being pushy. We want to be consultative, and see, here's why being able to identify and recognize the buyer style is so critical. Because when you talk to a person in the way that they want to consume information, which is synced up with how they think and how they make decisions, you're in total alignment with them. So here's the key. They'll have such a positive experience with you that when it is time for them to make a purchase, there's no one else that they're going to go to but you. That's the key. Okay. Let's move on to one of the other questions that we're going to cover, which is how do you put your finger on the pulse of employees' commitment and engagement without even talking to them? So as a business owner, Frank, you are completely covered up with tasks and your own responsibilities and working with the infrastructure and taking a look at all the metrics, and you're not working with the people side of the business. However, because of this online profile, he and I can basically put our finger on the pulse of where a person's discretionary effort lies. What's their level of commitment, of engagement? Okay? How frustrated are they, and therefore how well are they performing? Because you can't separate your emotions from someone's performance. So this has to do with this here metric. It's a graph that shows you how many positive emotional feelings they had versus how many negative emotional experiences that the salesperson had. And we're tracking it week to week over time. Now you can see this person is trending in the right direction. At first, here's the first 30 days or so, right? The probationary period. Okay, is what Frank told me, is he living up to what he said? Is my experience of what the interview had to say, is it realistic? Is it so forth? I'm trying to kind of find my way, figure out the culture of the company, the pace of the company, etc. And you can see over time it's been consistently pretty much improving with the exception of a couple of dips and valleys. And basically it's almost flatlined right off. So in this case, this person had come into the company and had a fairly high level of success in a fairly short period of time, and things are going very well. Now, I want to engage Frank Prindle here for a moment, because in one instance, in talking to one of the buyer's agents, her emotional state was so poor and her experience was so low that she was actually considering resigning and leaving the company. So again, folks, I'm able to be proactive as an outside expert, as somebody that she can be confide in completely and be totally transparent and say, okay, what's happening? What's going wrong? Where do we fix this? And as it turns out, Frank, it was something fairly simple. It was expectations of one person was different than the expectations of another person, but it was in something that was so pivotal and critical to a buyer's agent, which has to do with leads, that I basically called up Frank right away and said, Frank, here's the situation, here's what's happening, here's what I think we need to do to fix it, what do you think? And Frank, I don't know if you want to go ahead and take it from there in terms of that conversation, in terms of what happened.
Sure. And it's a good example of everything you've said, John, that's resonated with me, because in the past, with this fire agent, I thought that everything was going well. It was going as well as it could be. And if there were any downside, it's just from the learning experience and the experience that we would together improve over time. But with you hearing what the agent was saying, we were able to, I met with the lady and her immediate boss, per se, in our team, and it was just communication. It was your simple communication that we were able to fix in a 15-minute discussion, and she's been one of the best buyer agents ever since, because we solved her problem. And what bottom line, what you've given us is the focus to say, we might not even be aware of it, but this could be an issue now and in the future. Well, that's been taken away. So all we have to do now is keep that person on pace. It was a great, great learning experience, something that we had never been able to touch before, John. And it's been so positive to be able to work through this with you, because what you provide is a third party looking in at our production and how people feel, where they might answer me differently than you. And so it's a great relationship, and they understand you're part of our team working on this. And it's been just a very, very positive for the 4 people that we've hired in the last 6 to 7 months.
Thank you, Frank. Now, here's part of the key, folks, is we were able to catch this very early. That's the key. You don't want something like this to fester. The more time that goes by and something like this is not resolved, the higher the opportunity that person is going to leave. So interestingly, and I say interestingly because this is what happened. The next week, this rep sold 2 homes. 2. And those were her very first 2 transactions as a new member of your team. So you're seeing cause and effect. I don't think the coincidence or that the timing was a coincidence, because you had to deal with, she was very, kind of discouraged, even though she's the type of person who has a good attitude. She was feeling beat up and discouraged. We got this thing resolved. Boom. She can now be freed up to be more successful. Okay.
And we would have never seen it before, John. That's the emphasis. That's the difference. I wouldn't have seen it coming,
right,
so to speak. And yeah, she's happy. Everybody's happy, satisfied, and productive.
Okay.
Huge difference than the past.
Well, let's talk about another one of your reps who's a new hire, who I believe has the capability to be the #1 salesperson on your team. Outstanding set of profiles. My coaching calls with her have been just exceptional. Couldn't be more impressed. We found out we just recently found out, in fact this morning, that she has not had any leads since last week. And so we now can proactively take a look and find out, okay, what's happening? Why is that the case? Now, in this case, it happens to be that the person that handles all your leads has been in transition and has been moving from one state to another, and that certainly is a big part of it. But that's something, leads are the lifeblood of a business. The less leads you have, the less opportunity you have to convert, the less money they're going to make. It's the sacred cow for salespeople. So now, we now have a game plan, and you also have somebody else on board that you just brought on specifically to help the reps basically monetize as much income as they possibly can by helping them with leads and all the details that go around, helping the reps be successful.
My challenge has gone from hiring the right people to now making sure the right people have all the tools that I promised them consistently. And so it's 180 degrees from where I was, 6 months ago.
Frank, talk to me about the impression and the message that it sends when you're hiring a 1099 person and you're saying a big part of our success is having a personal coach who's helped train a couple 100,000 people, who really knows and can really benefit you in your career. What impact has that had on getting a jump start in terms of their performance with you?
Well, again, struggling with this for 20 years, I mean, that seals the deal. We're not looking for everybody. We're looking for the right people. And when you can tell that right person that we've got an on-staff trainer, team partner, part of the team that's going to discuss with you, and from a third-party aspect, look at everything we do to make it all better, I mean, it's just powerful. And so if there's any apprehension from that person, that seals the deal. I mean, they're a good quality person, and John, let me comment that for the last, again, 6-7 months, we've been through probably 80 different resumes, and we've hired 4 to show you how tight that group is. Before, I would have probably hired 40 of the 80 because they interviewed. And so all that pain that I went through with those other 36 people has gone away, and we can really just focus on the right people. They're happy, and to say a world-class trainer is involved, again, helps seal the deal, because that's what these people want. They want to be part of this team long term, and that's a dynamic piece of the pie.
Right. I appreciate that. Let me also mention something of interest. I don't think I shared the story with you, actually, Frank. If I did, let me know. But one of your competitors was very close to hiring your last hire. But because you responded in a more timely and professional manner, the impact that had on her as a potential new hire, she had made the commitment to you, even though this other person was wooing her and said, I want you to come onto my team. What do I need to do to make this happen? And she basically said, I'm sorry, I've given Frank my word is my bond, and I know I can't, as much as I value and like the fact that you want me to join your team, I can't do that. So speed is everything. I'm a contrarian. Most of what I teach is the opposite of what everybody else does. So for example, most people hire slow and fire fast. Because of the tools and expertise that I bring, you can identify talent quickly, you can hire them quickly, you can get them onboarded quickly and get them producing quickly. It's not, you don't have to drag your feet, you don't have to be in fear as to whether or not this person is going to work out, just like I talked about in this first person, from this opening story. You now can have an 80% or higher level of confidence that the people that you're going to hire are great people because they have the it factor for administration, the it factor for being a sales thoroughbred. So, here it is. It's quite a small world that that your most recent hire is somebody that your competitor just, fairly, close to you was also going to be hiring. But I'll say this, thus far, every person that I am working with has embraced the coaching as something of high value, because it sends the message that you as a business owner value them and that you're investing in their personal development, you're investing in their success. So it's a win-win all the way around. So therefore, it's an incredibly powerful collaborative process where I help them with any of the areas that they get stuck as it relates to sales. So, and it's not just limited to that 1/2 hour. If they go on a call and they're working with a buyer and they come up to something that's kind of urgent, they need an answer right away, they have my cell phone. They can call me right away and we can talk about it. We can put together a path forward. So it gives people, again, an outside coach, which not only they value, but you can say it better than I do in terms of the value that it's delivering.
This is incredible,
Right.
John. I love the.
I did not know about.
Okay, yeah, she shared that with me on one of the coaching calls that we had, and I was like, wow, that's pretty powerful. So you can actually use the onboarding program as a company benefit, a company perk, to help you with the selection and recruitment of why they should join your firm. That's a brilliant way to position it. Frank, I know that we have some people that are online live. I'm not sure if you have any questions that have been documented there, but folks, for those of you that are listening live, if you have any questions at all regarding hiring, onboarding, anything at all, please don't hesitate, to chime in, and we'll do our best to answer your question.
Yeah, nothing yet. Feel free to ask the questions right in the comments, guys, and we can get a good response from John here. But nothing in as of yet, John. So maybe what are some questions people typically ask that maybe you could answer in the meantime?
What are some questions that people typically ask?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah, typically asked about bringing someone on or using, the how to interpret the assessments. I mean, one of the things that really stood out to me when I use you and even to Frank Prindle here was, I would think if you got 10 resumes, that's the most amazing thing ever, and you'll probably end up interviewing 8 of them, and like you want to hire all 8, But one of the things that you're saying is like you almost got to get like 80 resumes to run through the assessment to bring it down to what, 5 interviews? That's such an eye opener to me. Maybe you can go a little more in depth about the number of leads you have to generate for a position to be able to find that talent because it's so rare.
Right. Well, it's a good point. It's truly a numbers game. In other words, you want to cast the largest net possible, have your ad sent out to as many job boards as possible, and I tell you exactly where to place them, and to get as many responses. You want as much visibility and as many people to apply to take the assessment. So let me also mention this. I don't care about a person's experience or lack of it. I don't care about a person's education or lack of it. Their age, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. All those things are totally irrelevant. In fact, the Mark Spain situation with the listing agent I just described is a classic example of hundreds that I could share, okay, where those things don't matter. What matters the most is the assessment. So it may very well be after only 10 people that you have an absolute rainmaker. It just the luck of the draw. Recently, with another client, we had 3 people apply. All 3 of them had all of them were A profiles. I mean, stars, top 5, 10%. That's the exception. But conservatively, if you're getting 15, 20 resumes, 15, 20 people take the assessment, you're going to, just by law of the numbers, you're going to get 1 person, 2 people probably that are very strong. So, a case of locally here with Jason Bramblett, we helped him hire 8 people within 60 days in terms of buyer's agents. He did some radio advertising to help, with the visibility.
That was interesting. He had hired radio because he couldn't find enough qualified people online through the job boards.
That's exactly right. So depending on your geographic location, you may have to use some other vehicles and other mediums. You think about it, the people that are looking on the job boards are either unemployed or disenfranchised with their current job. Okay? The people that are going to work and listening to the radio, that's a totally different audience. And in his case, he's got about, I think, 5 licensed people and 3 people that are going, to get their that are going to get their license. But again, we're in the process of building a great team for him. So let me also mention this, since I mentioned the timing. Normally, from the time you run the ad to the time somebody hired is about 3 weeks. I've never had it go longer than 4 weeks, so it's something that we can do fairly quickly. Frank, I'm not exactly sure what your experience has been. Do you remember how long it took between running the ad and actually them starting?
We had resumes and interest right away. So within, I think, 10 days, we got our first person that you said should be a superstar, and she is. And let me comment too, John, as far as a business owner, where time is money, and this process has been so streamlined because of this. Again, where instead of me looking at 80 applications or 80 resumes, I'm looking at, fewer than 10. And that's a lot of money. And we've all been through it where when we've hired the wrong person, how much money is spent in that process of training, of mentoring, and then losing them to start all over again. So from a business owner, it all makes sense. It all just makes total sense.
Frank, that's a great insight. Thank you for sharing that. I would say it's without question, it's the #1 benefit or value point that your peers continue to bring up with me is they can't believe how much time they save. Because literally, once you make a decision as to who you want, what position you're looking to hire, your next involvement is basically sitting down and interviewing the short list of people that have the sales DNA or the administrative DNA and just making a decision based on the interview. Who do I like the most and who do I think's background maybe is the best fit? Now again, folks, this may be hard for you to understand, but I say that 20% of the hiring decision is based on the face-to-face interview. 20. The remaining is the assessment. Again, because 90% of what you need to know, you can't get at that in a face-to-face meeting. It's those
and what about
internal
references?
things.
References just. What does reference checking do? Tell us about where the reference checking comes in. We hear about references, but I never hear that coming up so much in the hiring process. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, what I know is that a lot of people in the industry are spending a tremendous amount of time doing reference checks, but reference checks are pretty much useless. I mean, think about it. Would any of us provide a reference that isn't going to give us glowing recommendations? Are they really going to be totally candid around any shortcomings or deficits of the individual that's asked them to be a reference? Even if you drill 3 and 4 deep and try to do that, it's so much time. Back to Frank's point. Hey, I want to know, can this person do this at a high level, yes or no? If so, you interview them. If not, you pass. You send them a nice regrets email, right, to maintain the professionalism of your brand in the community. You sit down and you interview the 3, 4, 5 best people, and you make a decision. That's it. It's elegant. It's simple. It saves you a tremendous amount of time, like Frank said. Let me just give you a quick example of how this worked. We had a person who was coming in, just a relative new graduate. This was not with Frank's organization, but with another, with very little life and work experience. She was a waitress, okay? And her assessments were some of the best I've ever seen out of all the ones that I've ever seen. Yet, because she's green and just a recent graduate, she revealed some inappropriate things in the interview, right? She didn't interview very well because interviewing is a skill. But I told the owner, I said, you will make the biggest mistake of your life if you don't hire this individual. Forget about the fact that she was nervous and that she didn't do a good job in the interview. This person is so incredible. You just can't afford. This is a diamond in the rough. You need to hire this person. Again, I don't care that she's merely a waitress. This person has so much upside potential. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Some people don't know how good they truly are.
That's great.
So,
did you hire him? Did she hired?
Well, when you get a strong recommendation like that, yeah, you've got to follow up and go ahead and make the decision. So anyway, and so that's the thing that I really, working with the broker owners has been such a breath of fresh air. Why? Because the secret to their success is hiring great people. Plain and simple. You can have the best infrastructure, the best systems, the best policies, all that stuff set up. If you don't actually have the people to make that work and to leverage the systems, it's game over. You're done, right? You just don't. And here's another thing. The smaller the organization, the smaller the company, the more important it is for you to hire great people. It's not like you're a Siemens or a Ford and you can afford for 40% of your sales force or for your workers to be horrible, right? You got to have pretty much every single one of them have got to be top performers. So that's something that's really crucial, and why I take so much satisfaction and enjoy working with the owners so much is because of the value that it brings. It makes their lives makes a significant difference in their lives for sure.
Frank Prindle, could you tell us maybe more about what's different about John's approach to hiring? I mean, for 20 years in the business, I'm sure you've seen a lot of different hiring methods, ways of doing things. You know, what makes this so different? Uh-oh, do we lose him? I think his internet connection went down, John.
Okay.
That's all right.
He mentioned he had
I think John hit it where he said 80% of it is the upfront testing and looking at the inner being behind the resume. I mean, again, that's huge in time savings and just focusing on the right people. And then when you can get the person in front of you, you understand that this is a quality person that can do everything you're asking for. So that's a huge part that isn't out there with other hiring systems. I went through a headhunter, and they do nothing at all like that. Nothing at all like that. It was just kind of more of the same of what I was used to. And then, like we talked about with my one agent, where we can identify a potential issue early on and jump right on it to keep them in line. It's the entire package. So not only is it hiring, but it's follow through, because I know in my heart this lady will be with me for a long, long time, which again is what I wanted for the long term. And so the entire process is so different. I just can't emphasize that enough.
Interesting. We don't have any questions here. That's fine. We'll send
Frank,
a replay
let me just piggyback on something that Frank Prindle said, and this is something that I don't think I have disclosed or that nobody really knows about in terms of all in the real estate market. That I actually have an employment agency firm in addition to working with real estate. Okay, so that is a traditional business that hasn't changed over the last 100 years. And what I mean by that is this. They basically try to find bodies and throw anything up against the wall that sticks. If you're breathing, right, and you have a heartbeat, they'll put you in and they'll recommend you to see them. For the most part, I'm not exaggerating it very far. Okay, so let me tell you what I do on that side of the business to give you a glimpse of the type of value that you are receiving. All right, all of my clients get a 1-year unconditional replacement guarantee. I want you to think about that for a moment. Now, this is only reserved for clients that are paying me 25% of the person's annual salary. I just helped an organization hire a senior vice president of sales. The salary was $185,000. My check that came 2 weeks ago was $46,000 in change. Okay? Because I certify and assess all of the candidates before I have them move forward, I give them a 4 times the industry standard in terms of a replacement guarantee. Most employment agencies are reluctant to give you a 3-month guarantee. I give them an entire year because I can stand behind the people that I represent with that much confidence and with that much authority. So you folks that are not using that type of a service where it's a retained search and it's a high, basically executive level person, and I'm getting 25% of their total salary. You basically are getting very similar value because the same diagnostic tools that I'm providing to these high-end clients, okay, is the same diagnostic tool that we're running all of your candidates through. It's just that I'm not handling every piece of the process and part of the puzzle. So basically, you're getting the same thing, but at a fraction of the investment. So, Frank, I don't think I disclosed that to anybody or let anybody know. Actually, been in discussions this week with a broker who has 5 different companies, and he's looking at using me for these retained searches in addition to helping him with the buyer agents.
Yeah, we looked at a recruiter, and it was $30,000 to place a salesperson.
Wow.
That's a $30,000 quote.
With no guarantee, right?
I think there was a guarantee, like 90 days or something.
It's 9. That's typically the industry standard, but they do that only because it's the industry standard. They have to give that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it's another good point. So folks, if you are struggling and challenged with bringing on the right people, it doesn't matter what the role, what the position, administrative, sales, inside sales, operations. It doesn't really matter what the role is. I would love to have an exploratory call to be able to see whether or not I can help you. I'm passionate about this because I know what a substantial and impactful difference it makes when you hire the right people and how much it frees up your time, how much revenue it's going to bring back. Again, it's in the sweet spot for me. I'm in the zone when I'm doing this because it provides me with a lot of intrinsic reward for finding the right people and helping people flourish.
That's great. Well, do you have anything else you want to add, Frank Prindle, about working with John?
I just see this as, again, a cure to my ills and what I needed for 20 years, and I see John as a long-term team member for the next 20 years. Providing this service, this great service that he has. It's created great wonders in the last 6 months, and I foresee everything's positive that I foresee happening for a long, long time. And so I really appreciate that. I really appreciate the connection.
Frank Prindle, I want to say also thank you to you, a huge thanks for being the model client for me, who has just been exceptional to work with, progressive, visionary. You're in it for the long haul. You see the tremendous value. You're experiencing it firsthand. Your people are benefiting, and so is your organization. It couldn't be a better fit for me, and I'm just thrilled to be able and privileged to be able to work with you day in and day out.
It's a win-win for everybody. It truly is.
Great. We'll go ahead and end it there. The replay will be available here on the screen, and we'll also get an email out to everyone that John knows. Thanks, guys. It was very beneficial. Learned a lot.
My pleasure.
Thanks.
Take care.